Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Inspiring Sci-Fi Fantasy for Teens, From Invasions and Revolution to Hope and Resilience. I'm Maggie Reagan, Booklist Book for Youth Associate Editor. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Also, Booklist will now be offering closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned above. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting subtitle settings. Last but not least, a link to today's title list was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download it, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the title list by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. We have a great program in store for you today, including read-alouds from today's amazing panelists and a special panel conversation too. To kick off the festivities, I'm now going to turn things over to today's moderator, Sarah Ressler Wright, educator and current ALAN president. Sarah, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to be the moderator for today's panel. And so I'm going to introduce all four of them first, and then I'll let them individually read a little bit of their work, and then we'll get going with some Q&A. So I will begin with Arnée Flores, who is a Vietnamese American transracial adoptee. She has been a classical pianist, a Montessori preschool teacher, a waitress, and a student. She currently lives in Seattle with her family. The Firebird Song is her debut novel, and I have to say, I really connected to the overarching idea that hope and fear are both born from the same spark. Brigid Kemmerer is the New York Times bestselling author of the dark and alluring young adult novels A Vow So Bold and Deadly, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, as well as Call It What You Want, More Than We Can Tell, and Letters to the Lost, and the paranormal young adult series, including the Elemental series and Thicker Than Water. A full-time writer, Brigid lives in the Baltimore area with her husband, her boys, her dog, and her cat. And when she's not writing or being a mommy, she's usually lifting weights. And I can say Brigid's latest novel, Defy the Night, is another heavy hitter. And I loved its satisfying ending, as well as the exciting idea that it's the beginning of a new series. Lilliam Rivera is an award-winning author of young adult novels Never Look Back, which is a Pura Belpre honor winner, Dealing in Dreams, and The Education of Margot Sanchez, as well as the middle grade Goldie Vance series. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Elle, to name just a few. Lilliam grew up in the Bronx and is currently living in Los Angeles. And I loved that her latest book, over there, We Light Up the Sky, has really strong and unique characters who all get a chance to fight against a very scary alien. Kalynn Bayron, our final author on today's panel, is the author of Cinderella is Dead and is a classically trained vocalist. She grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and when she's not writing, you can find her listening to Ella Fitzgerald on loop, attending theater, watching scary movies, and spending time with her kids. She currently lives in San Antonio, Texas with her family, and I just loved her new book, The Poisoned Heart, for the Black girl plant magic that was so unique and exciting and had so many twists. So I can't wait for you to hear from all four of these awesome authors as they talk about their great books. Take it away, Arnée.
Hello, I am so just thrilled to death to be here today. Thank you all for coming and for being excited about stories and wanting more of them. I'm honored to be on this panel and to talk to you about my middle grade fantasy, The Firebird Song, which came out on June 8th and is now out in the world on its own. It's a story about fear and hope, and it takes place in the kingdom of Lyrica, where it rains all the time and nothing will grow but weeds. It's a place where a single spark can turn into a monster and devour you. There's no hope really for anyone, just words on the castle wall. Wind, woman, thief. I'm going to read a passage from the story where our two protagonists are trying to unravel those clues, and they have just discovered a way to call the wind by giving it a secret. "I don't have any secrets," said Pruitt a bit too quickly. His heart pricked, but he kept his face even. He wasn't that person anymore. What did it matter if he kept it to himself? Calliope tilted her head. "I suppose I count as a secret, don't you?" So, holding the barge storm glass in her hands, Calliope stood at the prow just behind the figurehead, staring out at the black water. Luminescent algae floated in great swaths, and the scent of brine filled her nostrils. Silver fish flashed. Calliope shivered, sudden apprehension humming through her fingers, and for a moment she wondered if she was making a mistake. What would Meredith say? She tossed her curls. He'd tell her to go inside, to wait for a grown-up to do something, but she didn't want to wait. She wanted to act. Her mother had written the words on the wall for her, had paid for them with blood, and she wasn't going to waste them. She held the storm glass above her head and spoke out into the darkness. "Ancient spirit of the south wind, I summon you with this secret. I am Calliope, the lost princess of Lyrica. I have been hiding for 12 years, but I hide no longer." Pruitt stood behind her, skin prickling with the sudden energy of the moment. There was something new in Calliope's voice, something fierce and powerful. She seemed almost to grow as she spoke, and the orb glowed in her fingertips. Now I'm going to pass things on to Brigid Kemmerer.
Thanks, Arnée. That was amazing. You are an incredible reader. I almost want to FaceTime you later so that you can read a story to my children. I would really appreciate that. And hi, everyone else. I am Brigid Kemmerer. Today, I'm here to talk about Defy the Night. I am so excited about this book. It comes out in September. This is a really fun fantasy novel. It is completely separate from my Cursebreaker series, if you're familiar with that one. Defy the Night is a story about a kingdom that is overrun by an illness and is ruled by a ruthless king and his brother named Prince Korik. And the reason that the king and his brother have to be so ruthless is that this illness is basically harming their population in a severe way. And there is only one cure, an elixir made from this elusive moonflower. Now, out among the people, there is a girl named Tessa, our heroine, and she is one of my favorite heroines that I have ever created. And Tessa has taken it upon herself to basically make medicine by stealing moonflower petals and distributing this medicine among the people. And she does this with her best friend, a boy named Weston. Until one day, something happens to Weston and Tessa decides that she needs to figure it out by breaking into the palace to see if she can help save him. But what she discovers when she breaks into the palace is that everything she thought she knew about this illness ravaging her kingdom, everything she thought she knew about the cure and the medicine and the people around her might be incorrect. And if she wants to save her kingdom of Kandala, she needs to break everything from the inside out. I'm going to read a brief passage about Tessa and her best friend, Weston. "When he pulls me against him, I don't resist. He holds me for the longest time. We hold each other. This is so different from the other day when we were pressed into the shadows beside a house hiding from the night patrol. Now it's just me and Wes in the warmth of the workshop, our workshop, holding on as if we can keep out all the evils of the world. They'll be executed." His voice is so quiet. "At midday." I nod against him. "I heard." I draw back and look up. "Do you think they deserve it?" He hesitates and his eyes are shuttered again. This isn't something we ever talk about. Our conversations revolve around how to avoid detection, how effective the medicines are, and whether a little browning on the petals makes a difference, how frivolous and wasteful the elites are. We discuss the people we lose to the fever and the people who live. We don't discuss what could happen because I'm right. The king wouldn't care that we're stealing to help people. If we're caught, we'll be executed right next to the smugglers. I think, he begins and then shakes his head. I think we're wasting time. Do you have your mask? The patrols have doubled. Wes, I swallow and catch his arm. His voice was so harsh when he said, I'm not a smuggler, Tessa. Do you think they deserve it? I think that very few people truly deserve what they get. He pauses, and for the briefest moment, sadness flickers through his eyes, for good or for bad. I think of my parents executed in the street for doing the very thing Wes and I do. I think of Gillis dying for lack of medicine and Kendall killed to leave an example. I think of the executions to come and what that will mean for the people left behind. I think of Weston risking his life to save mine once upon a time, stopping me from falling to the same fate as my parents. I think of how he risks his life every night to bring medicine to people who need it. You only deserve good things, I whisper. And now I'm going to pass it on to Lilliam.
Hi, it's so great to be here virtually. And it's so nice to listen to everyone read because I too I like to be read. So it's really great. We Light Up the Sky. It's I guess it's a first contact story told through the point of view of 3 Latinx kids in Los Angeles who discover that one of them returns or is taken over by an alien and returns as one of their a grieving person. One of them is grieving their cousin, and she comes in as an alien form, I guess. And anyway, so it's definitely War of the Worlds inspired. And I really just kind of wanted to write the point of view through these young Latinx kids who are not really close, but going to have to figure out how to save the world or save themselves. And it's not just this kind of aliens that's the enemies. It's also humans. So I'll just read a little excerpt of it. I'm a huge fan of like Ray Bradbury and all those those are the kind of stories I was reading when I was a young high school girl. So I kind of wanted to write that story again, through the point of view of these kids. So I'll just read a little excerpt, and this is when they discover this alien. Okay. Across from the tent sits a girl in front of a house up for sale. She sits on the porch as if she lives there. The girl is dressed exactly like Tasha in the photo, identical. There's an eeriness to this, and Pedro finally catches on to why Rafa is apprehensive. Oh my God, Tasha. Luna whispers these words while a fear increasingly grows within Pedro. The girl sits with perfect posture, her hands on her knees. She doesn't move. Wait, Pedro says, but Luna is no longer by him. She runs across the streets, dodging cars towards the girl. She calls out her name, Tasha, Tasha. Shit, Pedro says. Don't just stand there, Rafa. We gotta go. They run after Luna. Tasha, Luna says, on the verge of tears, you're here. The girl has an uncomfortable smile on her face, a grin stretching across her lips. Pedro has seen that look before, sometimes on the faces of the people he serves at In-N-Out, doll-like empty grins with no substance behind them. A shiver runs up his spine. Pedro wants to walk away from this girl, this fake Tasha, but he can't leave Luna. She doesn't see what's right in front of her, doesn't see what Rafa has been trying to warn them ever since they got on the bus. That's not Tasha, Pedro says. Luna, that's not Tasha. I don't know who that is. But Luna doesn't listen. Thank you, and it's so great to be here. Oh, Duh. I'm supposed to introduce the next person. The next reader is Kayla. I'm so excited and nervous. So Kayla's gonna read for her latest.
Thanks, Lilliam. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here with everybody to talk about This Poison Heart, which is my new contemporary YA. It comes out next week. I'm very excited. It is Little Shop of Horrors meets The Secret Garden with a Greek mythology twist. It is heavily inspired by my obsession with Gothic literature, but set against this kind of contemporary backdrop. It's all things weird and wonderful and scary. And I really hope that readers will be pulled into the story. And I hope they don't hate me for the way it ends. I'm sorry in advance. So I'm going to read a quick passage from chapter 2 of This Poison Heart. And this passage, my main character, Briseis, has just harvested the deadly poisonous Cicuta maculata, common name water hemlock. I debated cultivating the hemlock for months before I actually worked up the nerve to do it. I worried about being in the park and not being able to keep the other plants from noticing me. On top of that, I was scared my parents would find out what I was doing. I was pretty sure that growing a poisonous bush in the park wasn't what they had in mind for how I should spend my summer. They wanted me to hang out with the few friends I had and do whatever it was they thought other kids my age were doing. Except I didn't think they understood how hard it was for me to balance friendship with the need to be near my plants, keeping what I could do a secret, and navigating the world in a way that didn't draw the attention of every single blade of grass, every tree, every shrub. In my room, I closed the door and set my backpack on the bed. I thought about locking the door, but I pictured Mom taking it off the hinges and decided not to. I flipped on my microscope and sat at my desk. I switched out my glasses for a pair with a built-in magnifier and pulled on a pair of plastic gloves. Removing the hemlock from the bag, I broke off a sprig and tossed it into a metal tray on my desk. I opened a notebook to write down my observations. The taller plants could grow up to 7 feet tall, but this sample was only about a foot. Its leaves 6 inches long with alternately arranged oval leaflets. It was sharp too, and its leaf veins terminated at the bottom, not the tip. The root was the deadliest part. Over time, as the blossoms grew taller, the poison pooled in the bottom third of the plant, leaving the leaves and flowers fairly harmless as long as they weren't ingested. I pulled the roots apart. They looked like small, pale carrots and smelled like them too. They oozed a thick, straw-colored liquid as I sliced into them with a scalpel. This was the substance that would bring on nausea, vomiting, seizures, and ultimately death. A set of hands clamped down on my shoulders. The scalpel slipped and sliced through my glove, directly into my thumb. I'll leave it there.
So I hope you now have a little taste, although we don't want to taste the hemlock, of all the amazing books that that we're here to talk about today. So every author, go ahead and turn your cameras back on and unmute yourselves. And Kalynn, really, we kicked us off because I want to know, in all of the books, plants and flowers play an important role. So can each of you speak to what is the role of the natural world in your novels and what inspired you? And Kalynn, we need to know more about This Poisoned Heart. You can see it's so cool and creepy. I love the cover. So tell us, how did you get the idea for plant magic?
Yeah, I love plants just in general, nature, the outdoors, but I am the worst person for like keeping plants alive. Like whatever my main character Briseis, she has a green thumb, whatever the opposite of that is, that's what I have. I kill most living plants that are around me. I'm looking at them right now. They're so pitiful by the window, but for me, it's still something that I'm fascinated by, but I was also heavily inspired by root work practices, especially of like Black folk magic rooted in kind of Southern culture. That's my family. That's where my family is from. And so I had these kind of, I had this kind of obsession with plants for a long time. And additionally, really like 2017, I read about this place called the Alnwick Garden. And they have an entire collection of deadly plants that have to be like very specifically cared for by like a dude who wears a biohazard suit and like can't touch the plants. And they're behind this locked gate that has like a skull and crossbones. And so I read that. And then I had all these other things kind of in my head. And I was like, that's just so fascinating. I can put those things together for sure. And so that's kind of where the inspiration for the plants and the plant magic came from for me.
Excellent. Well, and I love the creepiness of it and yet the positivity of the root magic. And Lilliam, you're going to have to talk about a little bit about the alien and the plants that are happening in there as well.
I think with what happened during the pandemic, everyone became like a plant mom or, you know, whatever. I didn't know anything about plants. And then all of a sudden I was like, I need more. And so I became obsessed, but it's not natural for me to have natural stuff. I'm, you know, I'm from New York, I'm from the Bronx. I am not a nature person. I find those places unnatural. So they feel very alien-like. So having plants and taking care of plants fed very much into writing about like a first contact story with We Light Up the Sky, because it was that feeling of like scariness and unknowing and really entering a world where I don't have control, you know, and it's, you know, I don't have control of my kids. I don't have control of plants, whether they're going to live and die. I'm hoping I'm doing the right thing. So it really was kind of that feeling of like, you know, we all felt that way. We were stuck inside the house. Everything felt strange and a whole new world set up. And so I encased myself with a lot of plants.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there are some creepy moments and some scary moments with the plants. And I feel the way that both of you do. I'm not a plant mom by nature. So, and Brigid, I mean, the whole crux is all about, you know, the moonflower. So why that?
So I am also not a plant person. There are literally no plants in my house. And if there were plants here, they would die immediately. I am really big on juxtaposing things in books. So I love taking something, you know, like this dark, torturous king who, you know, really feels like he has to hold on to power by, you know, really ruling with an iron fist, and having the cure for this terrible disease be this beautiful flower. You know, I love making things really atmospheric. And I just wanted to put those two things kind of against each other in the narrative.
Sweet. And Arnée, I mean, they go to this halcyon, beautiful place full of beautiful flowers and plants. So talk more why that setting.
I feel like I really understand what Brigid is saying about juxtaposition in books. In my story, the kingdom is a place where things don't grow, only thorns and poisonous plants, and nature has really become a chaotic thing. And so when the children go to the halcyon glade and they see the wild woman keeping nature under control in this beautiful, calm environment, it really sparks something within them, this idea that things could be different. And I think that nature in general is both a scary thing and a hopeful thing. And that's what I really wanted to capture, this idea that we must respect nature and work with it. And when we do that, amazing things can happen.
Awesome. And I mean, we're talking fantasy and sci-fi and all the books are so different, yet these themes are interwoven, and I love that. So we'll kind of go in reverse order and jump in. We'll keep the conversation going. Switching a little bit to characters who act in unexpected ways. That happens in all of your books. So why focus on the unexpected actions as a means to success? And Arnée, if you would start us off, and then we'll kind of go that way unless somebody wants to jump in out of order, no problem.
I think it just makes a good story. I mean, there could always be these really deep reasons for it, and for some of my characters, there are deep reasons for their unexpected actions. I think that people in general are unpredictable, and so when you're creating characters and you're thinking, what will they do next? Your characters often surprise you, and in the Firebird Song, I have these two children, and one of them expects things that are bad to happen and the other expects kindness, and those things work together. But when I was reading Defy the Night, oh my gosh, I so many unexpected things happen, and Tessa is just this great character. I'd love to hear more about how you went about creating her character and her unexpected ways of behaving in Defy the Night, Brigid.
So that's a great intro. Thanks. I loved writing this book. My initial way of putting this book together was I started thinking about all of the stories that I loved when I was a kid, like, you know, anything having to do with Robin Hood or Zorro, Cynthia Voight's Jackaroo. I'm totally dating myself by mentioning that book, you know, or On Fortune's Wheel, all of those old stories. I just loved the idea of, you know, these outlaws in masks riding around to kind of save the people from a tyrant in whatever way they could. And I love creating morally gray characters. I think one of the greatest things about YA literature is that it is really an opportunity for teenagers to see that they themselves can kind of shift out of this role where they are so heavily influenced by teachers, parents, coaches, all of these adults in their lives, where they can suddenly reach a point where, wait, I can make a difference in my world. Like I myself, without somebody telling me what to do, can really make a difference in the world. And that's kind of where all of my characters come from. With Tessa, I wanted to move away from, you know, the gritty fighting heroine into somebody who really kind of uses her brain. You know, Tessa is the daughter of an apothecary, so she really knows how to create medicines. She really knows how to help the people that she's surrounded by. And then I also have to definitely give a shout out to my amazing editor, Mary Kate Castellani, because she is incredible at helping me figure out how to bring out the best in my characters. And there was no different with Tessa.
All right, Lilliam, we're putting you on the spot because your character's very unexpected. I just loved each of them so much.
So like I mentioned, it's three brown, you know, Latinos in LA, and I grew up watching A Rebel Without a Cause, you know, that the movie with James Dean, and it was just all these, you know, Saminu and the Natalie Woods character. They're all these like kind of three kind of estranged or outcasts in their own little way, or just trying to figure themselves out, teenagers. And that's how I, you know, when I started thinking about what I wanted to write, I just kept thinking, yeah, I want to write Rebel Without a Cause, you know, a brown rebel without a cause, but with aliens, you know, and just like figure out what that's gonna look like. And it's my first book in Los Angeles, and so these characters are all kind of battling things, you know. They all like either Luna, who's grieving the loss of her cousin, who was her, you know, her close friend, her almost sister, and then Rafa, who's a homeless kid who's trying to keep that in secret and take care of his family, and then Pedro, who's outwardly bisexual, but you know, he has an uncle who's very homophobic and just dealing with that in his home life, you know. And so these three kids are not close, but somehow they end up having to deal with that, having to deal with all these differences and figure out how to, you know, how to save their family or how to save themselves. And I kept on coming back to this idea of love, you know, of what it means, you know, in love in times of crisis and instant love, but also just really kind of friendship love, all these kind of ways of how love comes about and saves us during a serious crisis. Because that's how I felt during pandemic. You know, I was like, all of a sudden these new friendships came up virtually and they really saved my life, you know? And so I just kept on leaning on them. And that was what I was thinking about when I was writing We Light Up the Sky.
It's so good. The characters, I feel like I could bump into them. These teenagers are so believable. They act like teens, and oh, you do such a good job. It's such a great book, and it's very modern, and it's amazing what you do in such a short it's not a long story, and yet these characters are really developed, and I feel like I know them. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. My kid read it as I was doing this road trip, and she's a teenager. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared if she's not going to like it. And thank goodness she liked it, guys. So I'm good.
Yeah, so you know, in this this Poison Heart, there are a lot of characters who are doing kind of unexpected things. Mainly my main character, Briseis, has this kind of this power that she was born with, that her parents know about, and that she is trying really hard to kind of control it. And you know, I think it's kind of a testament to, you know, how young Black women are often perceived as having these traits that make them dangerous, or make them you know, seen as something that they're not. So it's kind of an allegory for that, and how you know, when she kind of presses against these things that are just who she is, it causes her a lot of pain. And it's not until she fully embraces those things and just realizes that she can be who she is fully, unapologetically, that she really finds her own kind of strength and her own kind of power. But you know, we also have this family. There's Briseis and her moms, who uproot themselves, pun intended, from the place that they know. They only know living in Brooklyn. They only know the city. And so they have to make this choice. They're going to go someplace that's a little bit different, and well, a lot different. And they're going to have to find out how to navigate that. And it's, you know, there's risk involved, there's fear, but they still take that chance. And I think that kind of speaks to, you know, kind of my own beliefs, which are that, you know, some of the biggest successes that I've had are from doing something unexpected, doing something new, trying something different, and really kind of jumping in with both feet. I think sometimes it's necessary to take those kinds of risks and those kinds of chances. And I also just really love talking about how, like, this young woman has this very unexpected power and is in this strange place, and her parents know all about it, and they're right there by her side the entire time. And so it's kind of like, how are you like the chosen one and you have all these things to do when your parents are knee deep in your business? And I think that that's a really fun kind of element. You're doing unexpected things, but not too unexpected, because you have a curfew and your phone better be on and charged, and your mom is, you know, taking the license plate of this new friend that you made and letting them know that, like, she sees them. And so it's like, you know, it's all these very kind of unexpected things, but in a fun kind of family-centered way.
And I really appreciated that the moms were very supportive of her plant magic and just sort of rolled with it, and, you know, had a flower business of their own. And, you know, so often the, you know, parental figures are kind of butting heads. And so I appreciated very much that they were in support and working with that.
Yeah.
So, and you spoke, and I'm kind of monitoring with some help the questions that are coming in. So you spoke, Kalynn, to personal experiences that helped write your books. And Joe Sheldon asked the question essentially, so I think Kalynn's already answered it, how do your personal experiences shape the types of books or characters that you write? And so I think Kalynn's answered it. Lilliam, we've talked a little bit, you know, you said the pandemic definitely shaped this book, and this is the sort of first pandemic book that I've read that had a character that died of COVID, and that was hard. But are there other experiences besides plants and your community that you want to talk to?
Yeah, I mean, if you know my work, for the most part, I'm writing about brown, Latinx kids, and so I was I was knee deep in this idea of community and the pandemic and how we had to save ourselves in a lot of ways. I had a really small circle of friends who I was sharing exactly how I felt, and it's a thing about being in social media and then the reality of it, and there's this feeling, because I live in Los Angeles and my family is in New York in the Bronx. I'm actually here in the Bronx now, but I live in Los Angeles. I felt that the feeling of trap, of being a feeling like of hopelessness and helplessness, right? And I was just like, how do I do this? How do I navigate crisis this so huge that I'm just like, and how do I take care of my family that's so far away? So it was just like, I was feeling all those feelings as I was writing this book, and I really needed Pedro, Luna, and Rafa to save me. I really needed them to like, what would you do, kids? Tell me, because I need help. So it did help me in a lot of ways, just being able to kind of put these kind of fears that I had into this book.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, they definitely are working hard. They are working. Love it. Brigid, what about you? I mean, we got a lot of characters working hard in your book too.
So it's funny, since my book does deal with an illness in a kingdom, my book was not a COVID book. It was funny because I had turned in the first draft to my editor in October of 2019. So well before really any reports of COVID had even hit the media. And then we did revisions in the spring of 2020. So it made for a really fascinating time to be able to make changes to the book. And it was funny reading my editor's letter to me that she had written in January of 2020, like, well, if people were getting sick and, there was a shortage of medicine, is this really how people would react? And I'm reading her letter thinking, oh, now we know how people would react. They would buy all the toilet paper. No, I'm kidding. And when I was growing up as a teenager, I grew up in a very average, middle-class, white, cisgender type household. But I was also raised in a very strictly conservative Catholic household. And I think I spent so much time reading books about people doing adventurous things because I felt like I could never have adventures of my own. So it's always my goal to make sure that I give, especially my girl characters, the biggest adventures that I could think of and ways for them to break their own mold.
Awesome. Arnée, it's so much. We want to hear, this is your debut novel. So how did you put yourself and your experiences in your book?
I think it was, some of it I wrote and I didn't even realize how much my experiences were really speaking through what I was writing, even though it's fantasy. And I actually had an experience as a teenager where our family home burnt to the ground and we lost everything. And so that's really, it spoke a lot through this story about this burnt down, ruined kingdom and about finding hope when everything that's really tangible is gone, is destroyed. And then while I was writing it, it's like things were happening that also spoke to it. Australia burned and Notre Dame burned and the whole West Coast burned. And then I saw this young girl get on a boat and sail across the Atlantic with just this belief, this absolute belief that she could change things. And that hope, that hopeful anger I really wanted to grab a hold of. And so I feel like it was just all of these things coming together to create this story, both past and present. And I'm creating this fiction, but it's very much a part of me and a part of my experiences. I'm wondering, Kalynn, your parents in this, it's not your parents, but the parents in this story are so, I mean, I felt them. I had a very controlling parents, but like controlling in a loving way. But I'm wondering, if you're comfortable, how did your parents and the way that you were raised speak to the way that you wrote these parents in this story?
I think for me, it's more about myself as a parent versus my own parents. I think when we're talking about generational trauma, which is, something that this book addresses in a kind of in a different way. We're dealing with a physical object here in this Poison Heart, but the responsibility of it and passing that down, and the trauma that it causes, that responsibility holds, I think that speaks to kind of generational trauma. But when I was writing these parents, I was really thinking about, okay, well, no one's perfect. My parents definitely weren't perfect. And breaking those cycles, and how do I put that on the page? Because that's something that I feel like I'm doing with my own children. I have 4 kids. I don't want to, I want to be a different kind of parent than my parents were to me. And I wanted to show a different kind of parent in this YA story. They love each other, and they love Briseis, and they are a strong family unit, and they have, they bump heads sometimes, but it's always with love, and it's always with mutual respect. And it's always with this kind of understanding that, we want to do better as parents. And so in order to do better, we have to kind of change our behavior and change the way we think about things. And so they have these very, open, kind of honest conversations with each other. They are very supportive of Briseis. And so I think I wrote the kind of parents that, that I want to be, and that maybe I wish I had a little bit. And so, yeah, it's hugely personal to me, but I love Mom and Mo to the moon and back. I love them.
Arnée, that's such a good question. Feel free to jump in with some more. This is fascinating. And I think family is definitely the family you create for yourself, as well as the family. And I think for most of the characters in the other books, they're really kind of friendship relationships, more than necessarily family relationships, although we've got some brothers for Brigid and whatnot. So do you want to speak to the role of sort of family, friendship, and what kind of relationships you were placing in the novel and why? So I'll let Arnée, you can speak to this too.
Friendship for me was so fundamental, because we begin this story with all of the characters feeling some kind of isolation. Fear has made people separate. It has kept people from forming bonds. And in fact, even within the family, although there is love, Pruitt feels unloved because his family is focused so much on survival that they don't have the time or the ability to feed him that kind of nurturing that he longs for. And so, and Calliope has been hidden away. She hasn't had any friends. Her friends are paper animals that she's created. And so she really has this fantasy in her mind of what friendship will be like. And when she and Pruitt meet, it's not at all what she expected, and friendship isn't at all what Pruitt expected. And so there's this conflict that occurs where they've built up friendship in their mind of this great thing that it's going to be, and it ends up being work, and it ends up being harder than they expected. And I really wanted to show how friends, real good, genuine, deep friendship isn't always this easy thing. It's challenging one another and building each other up while also reminding them of who they truly are. And so that was really what I wanted to do. Lilliam, how about you? Friendship in your book is just, I mean, that's the core.
Oh yeah, I love what you just said about friendship. It's, you know, with Pedro and Luna, I think Luna for me is the harder character because she is grieving, you know, the loss of her cousin from COVID, and her friends, or the friends, you know, her friends that she hang out with, they're like over it. They're like, you know, you're grieving, it should be done. And I really wanted to talk about, like, you know, have this kind of conversation about how grieving never ends. Like, it's never, there's no expiration date for it. You just grieve, you know, it's part of you. And I really felt that, and I felt Luna was struggling with this, so she wanted to like be a part of this group that she doesn't even, I don't think, like. And you have Pedro, who's like willing to tell you exactly what you need, you know, he will tell you how, you know, these friends are crap, but you know, she can't hang with Pedro. She's, you know, she has issues with him. And then you have Rafa, who's like, doesn't know any of these people. He's just trying to maintain his family. He just wants to get through high school so he can help his family. And then they're all stuck together. And so you're just forced to like, kind of like, what does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to be in a community? And there's this very American mentality of being like individual, and, you know, I'm going to buy all the toilet paper. I'm going to, you know, get the first COVID vaccine instead of like thinking about community. And so that was really, for me, key. Like, you know, it's so important to me, like, not to bring this up, but, you know, I just saw my uncle who's a Vietnam veteran, and he's like, yeah, you know, now I do community gardens. You know, I used to protest and now I'm community gardens. And I'm like, that is a form of resistance, you know. Like, to me, it was just like, of course you are, like, that makes sense. That's what we should all be doing, you know. And so I don't know, it was just like, it makes sense for me in the kind of work that I write, to have these kind of characters question, what does friendship really mean? What does community really mean? Especially in the terms of like a crisis.
It's so effective. It really, really is. Yeah, I love it.
Sorry, my computer. Lilliam, I love what you just said about your uncle. I think it's so important for people to realize that there are so many different ways that we can all build community, that, you know, that it doesn't just have to be about protests, that there are different ways that people can come together and make a difference. Yeah, I love that story.
Thanks, Brigid.
Speaking of actions, in all of the books, the actions of the characters over time really kind of speak louder than the words that they say. And so can you address, no spoilers, Brigid, in terms of how this manifests in your books as well as in your own life? But I do want to know, actions speaking louder than words. And Brigid, I'm starting with you.
I'm just trying to think of how to answer. All right, so, yeah. You know, I do, you know, action speaking louder than words is kind of something we learn from when we're kids, right? You know, and when I'm creating my characters, I think I make very deliberate choices as to what they're saying versus what they're doing, and what the reader sees them doing versus what they read in the dialogue. And again, trying to avoid any spoilers, I love for my characters to do surprising things, you know, just like what we were talking about before. I think that's one of the greatest parts of reading, is to discover new things as we're going along, or to see someone do something that we weren't, you know, quite sure that they were going to do. That's just one of my favorite things in books, especially with anything tropey. So again, like anything like with Robin Hood or enemies to lovers, anytime you pull those tropes in and then turn it on its head can be fun and exciting. Kalynn, what about you? What do you think?
So I have like two ways of looking at it, right? Like, which, I mean, they both kind of inform each other, but like in this specific book, you know, Bree is a little bit of an introvert. And so for her, actions are like, you know, they literally speak louder than words. Like, she's, you know, uncovering her own power and discovering all of these secrets and kind of questioning the actions of the people around her because they don't quite line up with what she's experiencing. She's hesitant about moving away from the city and being vulnerable. But when she takes those steps, when she has these kinds of revelations, she learns more about herself and where she comes from. But in a broader kind of sense, which also informs the work, talk is cheap. And we, if we look at the kind of more recent events going on in the world, it's a kind of serious note, but I think it's worth mentioning, when George Floyd was murdered by the police, there was this flood of support for businesses, from businesses and companies for Black Lives Matter. People were posting Black squares on Instagram. People were saying, "We stand with you." But did you make sure that Black people had positions, with competitive pay at all levels of your company? Are you protecting your Black employees and students and community by calling out racism when you see it? Are you taking the actionable steps to really back up what you said? And I think that parallels, with themes in the book. People are telling Bree that they care about her and that they want what's best for her, but their actions are not lining up with what they're saying. So when we're talking about, the work, the actions matter more, I feel like more than ever that feels true. It's really more like, don't talk about it, be about it. So that's kind of Bree's attitude and my attitude in general.
That is a great quote. Don't talk about it, be about it. I love that, Kalynn. Thank you. Arnée, what about you?
Wow, I'm still digesting that, Kalynn. That's really, really good. Thank you. Thank you for saying that and for helping me to see things from that perspective. This story is about children and their special ability to hope in the face of fear. And children watch things and they see things and they don't care as much what you say. They care about what you do. And so in this story, I think that the children have looked to adults and wanted to trust them and wanted to believe that they were going to make things better, but they didn't, and they haven't. And so the children feel a responsibility to do what other people failed to do, what the adults who are supposed to protect them have not done. So that's where the actions, they decide to take the action and to do the brave thing that grown-ups haven't done, not because they're not brave, but because in their mind, being brave is surviving. And the children don't have the life experience to really know that they could die, right? I mean, they do, but also they can go into the world with this special fearlessness that the adults no longer have. And I really wanted to capture that. And again, it goes back to being inspired by Greta and her fierceness and her fearlessness.
Well, and Lilliam, the alien's actions speak louder, and really the alien doesn't speak.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on that one?
Oh man. I guess my thing is just this idea maybe of even just authority, the authority figures, and just trying to find, like everyone says, oh, find someone who will help you. That saying, I guess, like look within the stranger. I don't know what it is, but it's just this idea of like who you gonna turn to. And I come from New York, so I don't trust anybody. And so then my characters are not like that. Some of them, Luna feels like she could. No, I kind of know these people. Like she tries, And so there's that idea of like, who are you going to turn to during crisis? And we all know, you know, that the people who are mostly overlooked are the ones who are mostly in need, right? And so I'm just like, so you got to take it into your own hands, you know, we got to make do. And that's how I feel these kids are, you know, they're just like, they're trying to navigate this idea of who those in power, and should we trust them, and who do we talk to, and compared to, like, you know, taking, you know, doing what they have to do, you know, to survive. And so yeah, that was kind of like the battles that I was having.
That's awesome. Well, and we really, it is 2:55, and there have been amazing questions in the Q&A, so I apologize if we didn't get to yours, but I'm going to kind of combine. Andrea Lipinski asks, what kind of readers were you when you were growing up, and what kind of readers do you imagine will connect with your books? And sort of final, I love how you were pitching your books, and they're all fantastic. So final thoughts on your books and the ideas of new and imaginative sci-fi, fantasy. Who are the readers that you want to connect with? Who's going to connect with your book? Anyone is welcome to take this away. Who do I pick first? All right, let's see. Kalynn, start us off, please.
Okay. I think, you know, for me as a young reader, I read a lot of adult fiction just because that's what I had access to. I wasn't really finding a lot of what I wanted in fiction that was for younger readers. And so, you know, I try to write things that younger version of myself really would have wanted to see. You know, it's Black girl magic, it's queer Black girls for the win every time. And I really just, you know, I want readers to come along for the ride and enjoy these stories and kind of get lost and be a little scared and have, you know, an adventure. But, you know, I just want, I really want my queer Black girls to feel seen. I really want y'all to feel seen and held by the work, and to know that you can be the hero of these stories. And we're all in it together. And so I feel really honored to be able to write these kinds of stories. And this Poison Heart is so much fun. I had so much fun writing it. Comes out next week. And yeah, I feel really honored. Writing for young people is the honor of my life. And this Poison Heart is really special to me. So yeah, I hope that comes through to the readers.
Awesome. It really, I'm ready for next week, although I already got to read it. So. Let's see, Brigid, go ahead.
So I would have to say, when I was growing up, like I talked about earlier, I love stories of teens, just kind of finding themselves, stories of adventure, stories about, you know, outlaws, people rebelling against authority in all different kinds of ways. And, you know, like I said, I probably reread Jackaroo like a dozen times. It was one of my favorite books when I was growing up. And I really hope that teens relate to Tessa and Weston, not so much My Brutal King, maybe. I can't wait for readers to meet all of my characters.
Awesome. Lilliam?
So We Light Up the Sky, you know, I think it's a great book for young readers who want to kind of read that kind of alien invasion story, the first contact story, told through the point of view of brown Latinx kids in LA. It's about a city becoming almost your enemy in some ways. And it's just, yeah, and it's dark and a little bit scary, but there's some jokes in there. And yeah, and I really love these characters. I love all three of them. It was really fun to be able to explore what they would do in that situation.
And Arnée, finally.
Well, if this is the last thing I get to say, I want to make sure that I send people to Sarah's website, which is vocabgal.com.
Aww.
So great, and it has so many amazing resources. And Sarah has worked so hard on it, so definitely go and check it out. And thank you, Sarah, for being such an incredible moderator and for your insightful questions. And I'm so glad I got to be on this panel with everyone. Reading your books is the best part of my job. I had to do it. And so it was really an honor. As a child, I wanted books with magic. I wanted stories about princesses. I wanted stories that really fit that like chosen one theme. And so I would always go through the shelves and read the back and find those stories. And there were never enough of them. But my favorites were, I mean, of course, I love other kingdoms and other worlds. And so Chronicles of Narnia and The Underland Chronicles by Suzanne Collins was a really great way of doing a kingdom that's sort of in our world, but hidden. And I really enjoyed that. And of course, Susan Cooper and her Darkest Rising series, which is not another world, but to me, it felt like that Welsh, just the environment of it is so atmospheric, and I really, really loved it. And I think that because I was a lonely child and I didn't have a very happy childhood. And so books to me were a source of comfort. And I loved the idea that I could open the pages and find myself someplace else and read about bigger problems than my own. So I think that this story it would have been a comfort to me, and I hope that it will be a comfort to children who were like me. I think any kid who loves magic, who loves adventure stories and quests and riddles that need to be solved, I want this to go to them. It's my love note to them. It's my encouragement. It's my message that hope can truly conquer all. Even if you are a child who is sad and who is lonely and who maybe has trouble in your life, I want this story to be a hug for them.
Well, thank you for ending our panel with such amazing thoughts. Thank you to everyone who listened, and thank you again to our amazing authors. Hopefully this was as awesome for all of you listening as it was for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And thank you so much to Arnée, Brigid, Kalynn, and Lilliam. It's been such a delight hearing from all of you, and we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with all of us today about your amazing books. For the latest information about the books discussed in today's presentation and for tons of other children's and YA titles, be sure to follow Bloomsbury on Twitter at Bloomsbury Kids or on Instagram at Bloomsbury YA. And to download ARCs of must-have books on NetGalley right now, head over to bit.ly/3Q13EA5. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Did you know there's still time to register for ALA Annual? It's taking place in just 2 days between June 23rd and the 29th. And this year's conference will feature amazing speakers like former President Barack Obama, as well as educational programming and an opportunity to connect with colleagues and librarians everywhere. Visit https://2021.alaannual.org for more details. If you are not yet a subscriber, you can pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. And one more huge thank you to our moderator and panelists, Sarah, Arnée, Brigid, Kalynn, and Lilliam, and to our sponsor, Bloomsbury Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. We'll see you next time.